Hello and welcome to Fin24. Today we are chatting to economist Arthur Kemp and we look at what he foresees for budget 2017. Welcome, Arthur.
Thank you, Mushfika.
Arthur, can one agree that some of the key building blocks are falling into place to return South Africa to fiscal sustainability?
I think that's spot on. The Treasury doesn't always get credit where credit is due. We pay a lot of attention to the main budget balance. But I think more attention should be paid to the primary budget balance. That's simply the revenue less non-interest spending. You can't do too much about interest spending in the near term. In the longer term, you have to try and keep inflation low and lower your debt ratio. But in the near term, you have to pay the interest bill.
What is our interest bill right now?
Well, in the past fiscal year, it's going to be close to 150 billion rand. That compares to 50 billion rand in around about 2009, 2010. So there's a lot of resources there that gets going into paying.
And at 150 billion rand, that's a lot of money that we could be using in some other place.
For sure. If you want to put it into perspective, you can compare to the health budget. The consolidated health budget last year was around about 170 billion rand. So very close to that kind of a level. And if one looks at the revenue less non-interest spending, so including that expenditure, then in the course of the next year, I think we're going to move into a slight surplus. So if you exclude interest payments, government is actually collecting more revenue than what it's spending, and that's the first critical step towards stabilizing the debt ratio.
Arthur, where do you think Minister Gordhan is going to be concentrating his spending on?
The medium-term expenditure framework gives us a very good idea. The strongest growing component of spending, unfortunately, at this point is interest payments. But that aside, the second strongest component is going to be, in terms of growth in any case, is going to be post-school education. The biggest component in absolute size is basic education, but the Minister is also going to be growing health spending fairly rapidly in real terms over the next few years. It will be above inflation. And then also, I think, above inflation increases in the total social protection bill as well. So those are the key areas, and clearly that is aimed at the socio-economic needs of South Africa. You would need to compensate for that by holding the reins elsewhere. One of the biggest components of that would be the public sector wage bill, defence spending, and those sorts of areas. You would have to then obviously rein in spending to create the room for spending on those socio-economic needs.
So besides those areas, what else can we look at in Minister Gordhan cutting on?
Well, in terms of cutting spending, I think the shift towards the centralisation of procurement of infrastructure spending, this is a huge component of government spending. They spent 1.6 trillion rand over the last number of years, and are in the medium term going to be spending close to another 1 trillion rand. The Minister is looking to save quite a lot of money there, and obviously that speaks to the efficiency of investment spending of government. Of course, that program, the procurement program, needs to be transparent, equitable, and cost conscious. And I think the Minister would also be using that for social inclusion, the spending on infrastructure spending, since it does create demand, and also it does employ people. But nonetheless, that area of spending, I think, is going to be critical to enhance efficiencies and to cut spending relative to the previous baseline.